In the previous video, we had seen a nice example of the poisoned pawn, but we also touched already upon the topic I would like to discuss now. It's about how to recapture towards the center or away from the center, and it's very difficult, but there are some interesting discussions on it, and I would like to show you one game and also some other ideas. I have selected the game Dominguez against Wesley So. And it started with the moves e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6. So we have a Petrov, knight takes e5, d6, knight f3, knight takes e4, knight c3. And now, actually very similar to the previous game of Amin against Gordievsky, after knight takes c3, you have a choice between capturing on c3 with the b pawn or with the d pawn. And this is a discussion you have in many opening lines, actually. In this particular position, it's kind of common to recapture with the d pawn, not with the b pawn, because after the capturing with the b pawn, it's a kind of symmetrical position, and you no longer can really castle queenside because your queenside will be too vulnerable. Also, it's a little bit slow move. You will spend some extra moves to complete development. So the big advantage of capturing away from the center in this case is that you're speeding up your development. You can quickly bring your bishop out, move the queen, castle queenside, and that is actually quite a nice setup. And of course, black can make a decision of castling kingside or castle queenside. But especially when you get a battle with opposite castled kings, this pawn on c3 could actually be functioning as an extra shield, as a protection for your own king. For example, whenever you castle queenside, let me just make a couple of moves. Bishop e7, bishop e3, castle, queen d2, b6, castle, queenside. Well, this is theoretical position, but I would like to show you some general ideas. If you have a position where you're castled in this way, you are actually even able in certain cases to push the double pawn to gain more influence in the center, and you're not really weakening your king's position because you still have your free pawns in front of your king. So that is actually a benefit, but also in general it's very strong pawn formation. We will come back to this position, but I would like to show you another idea. Is that now very fashionable is this Caro-Kann line, this main line. With knight c3, take on e4, and now, of course, bishop f5 is the main continuation, still challenging the knight. Knight d7 used to be a popular move, but also now the move knight f6 is actually quite interesting. You are for a choice here, because knight takes f6 is the critical move. You're weakening black's pawn structure, but the question is how to recapture. So for quite some years it was considered that g takes f6 is the most challenging move, and in fact this resembles also some kind of pawn structure which you often see in this line from the Scandinavian, where the queen is ending up on c7, and there are maneuvers where the knight from b1 takes on d5, goes to d5 and takes on f6 the knight. Well, that's a different story, but you get similar structures. It's only that the problem of this structure is that you're not really able to castle kingside anymore because your kingside is too vulnerable. You still have plans to castle queenside though, and there are some advantages to capturing towards the center as you increase your influence on the squares on the fifth rank. The rook can use the g-file in some cases, but also the pawn on h7 could be vulnerable. So there are some disadvantages to this recapture as well. But recently the move e takes f6 is actually very popular, and of course there is this very primitive view on this topic that if you get a pawn endgame, that would be technically lost because you cannot use this extra pawn with black to create a pawn majority, whereas white can actually do. So of course from a statistical point of view this could be very bad for black, but there is some dynamical compensation, and there are actually quite a number of interesting games here, which I'm not going to discuss with you, but I just want to inform you about the options, is that black is going to put his bishop on d6, he's going to castle kingside, and in fact, it's not that easy to launch an attack for white against the king, because the king protection is quite strong. And in fact, in many games, you'll see that black is advancing some of his pawns in order to gain more influence in the center by restricting the mobility of white's pieces. This may sound a little bit abstract, especially as I don't have an example on that, but I like you to inform you about this opportunity. So it's not that one recapture is good or bad. It just gives a little different dynamics to the position. And e takes f6 is currently the dynamical way of handling this opening, and has been played by many strong players, including Magnus Carlsen. But let's get back to the game of Dominguez against Wesley So, because there are similar ideas which can be applied to the pawn structure arising from the Petrov. Black went for bishop b7, and we have a position with opposite castled kings. So of course, with opposite castled kings, it's also a matter of time bringing the pieces out, open the files towards the enemy's king. So white goes h4, and this is typical move, so that in many cases you can bring up your rook, or you can consider pushing both your pawns, all your pawns on the king side in order to create new weaknesses. But that last pawn move with g4 is not really an option now, as the knight would be hanging. So that's an idea for white, for black, sorry. But after knight d7, we're continuing the game. The black is bringing his knight to f6, so offering some additional aid on the king side. But now white is coming up with a very interesting plan, as it's not that easy to push the g-pawn, as I said. It's not only because of the knight hanging, but also because the knight is intending to control the g4 square. But white went for this move bishop d4. May looks a little bit strange, provocative. Black went for the move c5. But after bishop takes f6, white went for the move queen to f4. Actually, interesting concept. What I like about this pawn structure is that the queen is also able to come quickly into play. The d-file is open, so there's potentially some pressure against the backward pawn. So also by capturing away from the center, you're actually faster in the process of mobilizing your rooks. And here you got to be very careful, because white has a lot of plans of building up an attack against the king, particularly by launching the g-pawn, as the queen is now protecting the knight as well. So white, after d5, continued with the plan of playing h5, interesting move. You would like also to consider a move like knight g5. But then after a move like g6, it's in fact not that easy to push your h-pawn, because after you push the h-pawn, the knight is no longer defended. So you got to play something like queen g3, but then maybe queen b8, offering the exchange of queens is a thematical idea. White can go something like f4, but apparently it's not that easy to break through on the king side, even after a move like h6. Of course, this requires further examination, but I like the move h5. Rook e8 played, and now it could be interesting to play a move like queen f5, targeting the pawn on h7, but black will play g6. If you go move like queen f4, black is actually kind of solid with his dark squared bishop. And this is something what you know from positions with the fianchettoed bishop, is that you need your dark squared bishop to challenge this bishop on g7. And there's this saying that, for example, in the dragon opening, is that even such a bishop is worth an exchange. So there are examples where white captures with his bishop a rook, wins the exchange, but after that he no longer has the material, the attacking potential to remove this important defender. So apparently things are not that simple. Even, let's say, if you take on g6, h6, g6, knight g5, queen f6, for instance. Well, there are still a lot of practical chances for white, and you may consider using the h-file. But once again, imagine you get a queen on h7. What is next? It's not so easy to eliminate this bishop from g7. So very interesting attacking ideas for white. Don't forget that if white's attack is not working out, queens are getting exchanged, black is more than fine with the current pawn structure. He has a nice space advantage in the center. If queens are still on the board and the attack is not working, black in some cases can also consider launching his b-pawn and try to create pressure on this long diagonal. But this is long-term idea. It's up to white to prove something. He decided to try that with the move g4. And now Wesley made actually a strange move. I think he should have tried to counter in the center with the move d4. As a rule of thumb, you need to counter an attack on the wing with a counter attack in the center. So the move d4 was actually quite interesting. If you play, let's say, a move like rook h3 to overprotect the knight and prepare g5, black can actually play h6, and things are not that simple. Black seems to be in control. If you go g5, well, then the problem is there's this immediate bishop takes f3, g takes f3, and now queen takes f6. And I think white's attack is coming to an end here, and black is absolutely okay. So d4, interesting idea. Also, not only to open the center, but also to let your pieces functioning. The bishop is coming into play. Always ideas to eliminate white's attacking pieces. Instead, Wesley So just weakens voluntarily his king side with the move g6. Very strange decision. And after h takes g6, h takes g6, there followed g5, bishop g7. Well, it looks very similar scenario as what I described earlier, that black has this fianchettoed bishop, and it would not be easy if you, let's say, bring your queen to the h-file to deliver mate. It's not that easy without the dark squared bishop yourself. But there's a very nice blow with the move rook h7. Absolutely key idea. Of course, rook cannot be taken because of queen takes f7, and it's going to be mate on the next move or very soon. So now black went for the move d4 in order to, well, trying to generate counterplay, but it's all coming too late. Especially now the move bishop c4 is quite cute, threatening to take with the queen on f7, hitting the weakness. And, well, if you take on f3, things are not leading to mate, because if you take on f7, you can take on h7, and the bishop is guarding the h1 square, so you cannot bring up your rook there. But if you take on g7 first, you take with the king, queen takes f7, king h8. Now still you cannot go with your rook to h1. If you take on f3, there's queen takes g5 with check, and black kind of consolidates. But you can take on g6 actually, which threatens checkmate on h6. So queen takes g6, rook e7 is apparently one of the only moves. Queen f6, check, rook g7, queen takes f3, queen takes g5, and, well, king b1. I think white still has an initiative, despite being an exchange down, because black's king is kind of exposed. But, well, it's not completely game over yet. Still something to play for. Didn't happen. Wesley went for queen e7, and this is actually simply too slow. Doesn't really help black's defense. As white played this move, queen h4. This is a cute move. The point is that, of course, you're about to play rook h1, play rook h8, and it's just game over. Or even rook g7 is possibly a threat. So black resigned, but the point is actually that after bishop takes f3, you can take on g7, king takes, queen h6, king g8, you take on g6, king f8, queen h6. The same could actually happen after going to h8 with the king. And now the point is that you bring up your pawn, you're threatened to take with the bishop. Queen h7 is a threat, and mate to follow. So very nice attack. But here you see that okay, black didn't really build up an attack. That's not really the case. But white's king is very very safe after this recapture with d takes c3. So it will take some additional effort for black to open the files there, but also white's attacking ideas are accelerated. So interesting debate always whether to take towards or away from the center, but from developing point of view it could be very nice to capture away from the center, even though capturing towards the center is usually increasing the central influence with your pawns. It depends on the situation. You'll get to see more of this sort in the interactive section. So good luck with that.